Guys for tuning in to another edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, the final one from Indy. We're here live at the NFL Scouting Combine. And before we jump into all this, make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live from Indy or from the First Star Logistics Studio. Daniel, this was a pretty interesting week for a lot of reasons. I mean, when you're looking at it, a lot was made about Caleb Williams not wanting to show teams his medical. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons as to why he wouldn't want to do that, because why would he show all 32 teams his medicals if, guess what? I'm not going to be drafted by all 32 teams. I'm going to be drafted by one team. In all likelihood, that team is the Chicago Bears. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts initially, I guess, on the Caleb Williams? Oh, this guy, we know he doesn't want to show teams medicals. He is, doing things that we've never seen draft prospects do in X amount of years.
So I'm going to give you guys two names, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. And I want you guys to understand why those two are important, because both those two carried some level of, uncertainty with them, whether it was Kyler Murray, who very undersized before, being the number one overall pick. Baker Mayfield, undersized, too cocky, too confident. He's not going to be drafted number one. They are not. It's the same thing, Malik. And with Caleb Williams, we saw this all, season long. We saw so many media members. We saw him get the headlines. I can promise you guys, the Chicago Bears organization hold the power to do whatever they want. And I promise you guys, they've definitely vetted Caleb Williams out way before we're here. Right. So this is just noise. This isn't the worst we've seen of Caleb Williams. This is just too much noise. And I promise you guys, the Chicago Bears organization is not going to say, oh, because he didn't give everybody medicals, that's why we're not going to draft them. This is just pre-draft noise. Don't think too much into it.
I agree. I also think, the conversation that's been had about Marvin Harrison Jr. for the first time, I was saying a little bit since I've been at Indy, at least. We got set up by a draft prospect during the media interview process. Don't know what to make of that. I wouldn't read too much into it. People are using that as a reason to justify maybe Malik Neighbors is the best receiver in the draft class. He doesn't have those character concerns. He didn't stand the media up. What were your thoughts on that, man?
It's the same thing, right? When you look at a guy like Marvin Harrison never had issues, right? So when everybody's overblowing this about Marvin Harrison Jr., how he, didn't talk to the media, it's okay. Like, he didn't talk to the media. So what? Does that mean, we're going to disregard everything he put on tape? Does that mean we're going to disregard the teammate he was at Ohio State? So once again, look at the prospect that Marvin Harrison Jr. is, and he is going to go top 5. Right. This isn't and shouldn't be a shock to anybody. So, and just one last thing, just because these guys aren't testing is not going to mean I'm going to knock them down the board. Right. So Marvin Harrison Jr., elite talent. Maybe he may not be a superstar wide receiver, but he is an elite talent. Don't read too much.
I think this is the part of the process where people start to overthink and they start to overcomplicate. And they try to, tear these prospects down and try to figure out if our team should draft them. Guess what? Yes, because film doesn't lie. If you love the prospect coming out and you feel good about him, 1 weekend, and you shouldn't change that unless it was something catastrophic. To touch on, sort of like our winners and sleepers, let me start by saying that JJ McCarthy hype is real, man. He has impressed a lot of teams here. He was polished at the podium. He said all the right things. He's a guy that I feel like is going under the radar in terms of media, but not going under the radar in terms of NFL, circles and NFL teams. It feels like a lot of people are in on JJ McCarthy. So that stuff you guys see online about JJ McCarthy improving his draft stock and the fact that this guy could probably go top 10, top 15, I think it's true. And I actually, call me crazy, I don't know if that's too rich. I think that for a guy like JJ McCarthy, who seems like he's made up of the right stuff, he seems like he's a winner. He wants to win. I'll just say this. I think Harbaugh built them right at Michigan, man. He got them ready to be pros at the next level. So what were your thoughts on JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, and just to touch on that, I think when you look at this pre-draft process, there's so much room for improvement for these guys. And even somebody like Jim Harbaugh going on national television saying, I wouldn't be surprised if JJ McCarthy's in the top 3 picks. That helps a stock like 100%. His. So JJ McCarthy, I'm a huge believer in him. I think he can definitely be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. And this wasn't, the conversation heading into this draft process. So JJ McCarthy, definitely very impressed. And once again, I'm penciling him as a top, 16 pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah. Did you have any winners that you liked?
Oh yeah, I definitely had some winners. And one thing I wanted to touch on too is something that kind of makes a lot of sense. I feel like people aren't talking about is the Las Vegas Raiders and their search for a quarterback, right? And obviously, Jayden Daniels is a projected top 3 pick, but something that isn't being talked about. Jayden Daniels was coached by Antonio Pierce and the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and nobody's really talking about that, right? Jayden Daniels went on national television with Chris Sims and saying his praises to Antonio Pierce. So that doesn't mean the Raiders are going to draft him, but that's a possible connection I look at and say, okay, if the Raiders really want a quarterback, if they really want to build with their head coach, Antonio Pierce, go out and get your guy, a guy that you know is connected in Jayden Daniels. So that was definitely something I saw. And another winner, I would just say the Minnesota Vikings. And nobody's really talking about it, but they're pick number 11, and they have their pick at the entire litter. I mean, you're talking guys like Jared Verse, guys like Chop Robinson, guys like Byron Murphy. When I look at, their draft position, they have the pick of quarterbacks too, whether they want a JJ McCarthy, whether they want, a Bo Nix, whether they want to go try to trade up. When I look at the Minnesota Vikings, they are a clear winner because they have their pick at the litter. So I'm very confident, that their pick is, going to be potentially a franchise changing pick. So it's going to be up to them to make the right pick. I look at Jared versus the guy, I talked to them, we discussed him, Chop Robinson. They're going to have their pick of the litter, defensive tackle, quarterback. I'm definitely very happy for the Minnesota Vikings. And if you want me to give one more, I look at the wide receivers outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Rome Odunze penciled himself in 1,000% as a top 10 pick. And then you look at other wide receivers like Roman Wilson, did great at the podium, was, apparently doing great in the interviews. And the way he carries himself, that's what people are talking about, right?
100%.
Coached by Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Roman Wilson isn't the flashiest wide receiver, doesn't have the greatest intangibles, but Roman Wilson's a guy I can definitely for sure pencil him top 2 rounds in the NFL draft.
I agree, man. And another thing, guy, that I want to talk about, you touched on the Minnesota Vikings. That's a team that loved the next guy I'm going to talk about, Byron Murphy. You want to talk about a guy that improved his stock at the combine? It's that guy. I've talked about it before. We obviously cover the Bengals, but we also cover the entire National Football League, and that's a guy that I know Bengals fans were clamoring for it, saying, "Is this a guy that would be there at 18?" I got the answer for you. No, I think he has the opportunity to be possibly one of the first defensive players off the board, maybe the first defensive player off the board. He's that damn good, and yeah, man, I think that he may have separated himself a lot from the rest of the pack. I think a lot of people are, I'll wait to say what I think about T'Vondre Sweat. But what are your thoughts on Byron Murphy, a guy that I know you loved?
Yeah, Byron Murphy he was always going to excel during this draft process, right? When I turn on the tape, the first name, and I'm not comparing the two, but I was like Aaron Donald. That's just the style of pass rush that this dude has. And he is an athletic, monster. So he was always going to test well at the combine. And this is the story, right? Like, I'm a huge fan of Jer'Zhan Newton out of Illinois. We've watched his film together, and this is a process that wasn't going to favor him. One, he wasn't the healthiest. Two, he's not doing these testing drills. And Byron Murphy is testing out of this world. So he made himself a lot of money in this pre-draft process. Before this, he was being mocked sometimes in the second round, sometimes late first round. Now, in my opinion, he's a bona fide top 20 pick, and he put himself in the conversation for a top 15 pick. And to a player like him, that's going to make him a lot of money. So I think he'll be a great player, but this pre-draft process helped him out.
Yeah. I think the final thing I want to touch on real quick is what to make of Brock Bowers not testing at the combine. This is a guy that it seemed as if he was going to test, and then at the last second, it was a pivot, and it didn't happen. And one thing I would attribute that to, just at least from people that I spoke to here in Indy, is I think a lot of that came down to wanting to show, hey, I'm a bigger guy than maybe what my playing weight was. I can bulk up. I can be big at the NFL level, but I don't know how much of it was ready to perform at some of the testing, because at the same time, even though you carry that extra weight that you probably didn't play with, at Georgia, because that was the talk. It was, wow, he looks a lot bigger than we thought, right? Yeah. He looks a lot bigger. And I think he was trying to calm those rumors of, oh, he's just a glorified, big H-back, or he's a guy that necessarily doesn't, even though his favorite player is Gronk and people like to do that comparison, you can't play them the exact same. I think this is a guy that was trying to show that, hey, I can look the part. And maybe when his pro day comes about, he'll be able to, participate in some of those drills and show teams, hey, I can also maybe keep the weight on and play at that high of a level.
Yeah, when you look at Brock Bowers, I think it's very smart, right? Obviously, I'm sure you had conversations, about what to expect during this draft process, and it's smart of him, right? You've got to do whatever it takes to improve your draft stock as Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
And Brock Bowers is definitely doing that. So I also heard some things people weren't too, excited about Brock as an interview, but I disagree with that, right? Like his answers he was given, maybe they weren't the most exciting. Some people were saying he's not going to give you, he's not very quotable. He's not going to be Travis Kelce quotes. But man, like I don't think that's super important. I don't think that teams are gonna knock him down the draft board just because he didn't give the media the quotes they wanted. I assure you, he's just as intelligent as before. So I look at Brock Bowers definitely as, he will be going in the top 20. Maybe there are some questions about, okay, how does he perform as an inline tight end? But the dude is elite in space. The dude is an elite playmaker. So Brock Bowers, I have no doubt he's going to go top 20. And everybody discussing him and saying he didn't interview well at media, that doesn't mean anything to these teams. Just because he isn't quotable doesn't mean he's not a good draft pick.
I'll say this. I think that sometimes the media overblows things and the NFL teams don't. I think at his core, man, I just think Brock Bowers is a football player. He's a guy that wants to play football. He could care less about the whole media thing and stuff like that. I think he just wants to go out there and prove he can play in the National Football League. I think it's just that simple. I don't think we should overthink this. I think it's just that simple. I think Brock Bowers is a guy that's going to continue to prove teams that, hey, listen, I've got the chops, obviously got the smarts, and I believe I can help your football team. And this is why you should draft in, your top 10 pick, your top 15 pick. So it's gonna be very interesting to see where Brock Bowers lands, especially throughout this entire draft process. I'll say another guy that I think really helped his stock was Quinyon Mitchell.
Yep.
And Daniel, you can touch a little bit more about him because I know that's your guy.
Yeah, no, Quinyon Mitchell is a guy where this draft process helped him out a ton. First off, went to the Senior Bowl, and he's not from the biggest school, right? And you have these other cornerbacks like Nate Wiggins who are, running a 4.2 or 4.3 combine. You have these other cornerbacks like Terran Arnold who put great stuff on film. And when you look at the helmet, they come from Alabama. Quinyon Mitchell is a guy where I look at how he can succeed in a cover 3 scheme, how he can succeed in a man-to-man scheme. The dude is versatile. The dude is a playmaker. The dude is a ball hawk. And that's just, I'm glad he's getting a shine, because when guys can put on the film that they are an elite talent, and then they can back it up with the testing numbers, they can back it up with the interviews. That's what Quinyon Mitchell did. So for him, I'm very confident. First off, he is a first-round pick, and he deserves to be, drafted alongside the likes of Terran Arnold, alongside the likes of Cooper DeJean. So very, very happy for him. And the film he put on, I'm just glad it's getting a shine because he didn't go to a bigger school. So
last thing we'll touch on, man. I don't know why I get a sense that the first 3 picks are kind of already decided. It feels that way already, right? I mean, it feels like we kind of know what to expect. The New England Patriots have definitely been snooping around the quarterback draft class. They've talked to almost every single quarterback throughout this process, man. And I think that brings a big question mark when it comes to Mac Jones. What is next for Mac Jones? Is Mac Jones going to be a Patriot this upcoming season? And from the tea leaves, it doesn't feel like that, man. It feels like they're going to probably look to try to move Mac Jones. I don't know where that spot is. I don't know what spot makes sense, but I definitely think there is going to be some Mac Jones chatter, some Mac Jones movement happening shortly. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it could go one of two ways. One, the new regime can kind of try to shoo out the old and hope to change Mac Jones' perspective of the New England Patriots. But at the same time, I look at when a relationship is fractured like that, I really don't think there's any way, that they're going to view it as being able to come back, especially if you want a spark right away. So what's smarter, right? Trying to revive Mac Jones' career 3 years into an NFL career, have that be your franchise guy. But if you're not going to give him the keys to your franchise, why are you going to do it? So you either go all in on Mac Jones, or you say, hey, let's trade Mac Jones. Let's go for a free agent quarterback. And let's draft a quarterback, because at the end of the day, you'll have 3 top quarterbacks: Drake May, Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams. You have your pick at the litter, so it's completely up to you. I think that it would behoove, or they would be very smart to let Mac Jones go to another team, close that chapter, and restart with another quarterback in this year's class. But at the same time, Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a good pick for them too.
He would be a good pick, man. But I definitely think it's going to mark it out there for Mac Jones. Excited to see what happens. You also saw increasing chatter here at Combine, about Hassan Reddick potentially being on the move. There was brief chatter about Russell Wilson, seeing what his next stop is going to look like and what that might look like. This is going to be undoubtedly a very interesting time. I feel like this is our time of the year, right?
Yeah.
This is our time of the year. We start, diving deep into these prospects, diving deep into the free agency. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to each and every segment episode that we've done, to cover the Combine here in Indy, man. But, I'll save a lot more for, I would say, when we get back in studio and talking about some more whispers and things that we've been hearing. But I will say this year's 2024 NFL Combine, I would classify it as a success.
Yes.
And I think a lot of prospects helped improve their stock. I don't know if there were too many prospects that damaged their stock, if you will. Yep. I think there's a lot of chatter. I think it's very difficult to damage your stock in Indy unless you just are a terrible interviewer and you're a terrible tester. But again, that remains to be seen. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live, wherever it is. But in this sense, we're going live from Indy for the NFL 2024 Combine, and that's a wrap.